Michael Boyle's StrengthCoach.com presents the Strength Coach Podcast, brought to you by Perform Better, the experts in functional training and rehabilitation. PerformBetter.com.
All right, hey everybody, welcome to episode 270 of the Strength Coach Podcast, the official podcast of Michael Boyle's StrengthCoach.com, the world's best source for strength and conditioning information, brought to you by Perform Better, the experts in functional training and rehabilitation. Check them out at PerformBetter.com. I'm your host, Anthony Renner. The show notes are located at my site, ContinueFit.com. That's also where you can find out more about my book, Be Like the Best, and the Be Like the Best workbook. The book consists of 50 interviews with top fitness pros, and after each interview is a Be Like, which is just an action step or challenge that'll help you be like the best. The workbook is all of the Be Likes put together with room for notes, so you can answer everything that we ask you to do and the action steps and the challenges. You can go to ContinueFit.com or BeLikeTheBest.com to check those out. All right, today on the StrengthCoach.com Coach's Corner, I spoke to Coach Boyle about timing. Now, we know he times sprints, but I wanted to ask him about why he doesn't time vertical or check vertical jumps every time in the gym, but it turns out he does. So that got us talking about O-lifts and then med ball throws. So just really talking about this idea about timing and monitoring different things. We also went in depth on the split squat guidelines and progressing to the rear foot elevated split squat. For the Results Fitness University Business of Fitness segment, I'm with Rachel Cosgrove to talk about best practices for increasing membership prices. If you haven't checked it out, check out the last episode. I put 10 of the Business of Fitness segments together and all in one episode. It was really good. The Functional Movement System segment, Jenna Gourlay is on to finish her two-part series on using the FMS with younger clients. For the TrainHeroic data-driven coaching segment, Adam Doughty and Tim Robinson add to their discussion on training variables. Today, they're talking about volume. Make sure you check out TrainHeroic.com. Start your free 14-day trial. Let them know I sent you. You'll save 10% off the first year of the TrainHeroic Pro or Elite editions. For the BodyByBoyleOnline.com, hit the gym with the Strength Coach segment. I have on Brett Jones. Brett's going to talk about some different concepts behind the StrongEndurance program from StrongFirst. We went over what the cost of training can be, understanding interval training. Maybe that pendulum has gone too far towards the high intensity interval training. Talked about focusing on high power output, understanding rest periods, training Wavy, the quick and the dead program, and what he found out using the push monitor and more. Lots of things to get to, so let's get on the phone with Coach Boyle. All right, now it's time for the StrengthCoach.com Coach's Corner with Coach Boyle. StrengthCoach.com, the world's best source for strength and conditioning information. You can try it out for 3 days, just $1. You have access to all the articles, videos, and programs, as well as the best forum on the net. It's the only place to have full access to Coach Boyle. He's on every day answering questions. Check that out at StrengthCoach.com. Coach, how you doing?
I'm doing good. You say that like you said that a few times. I actually kind of like, wow, he really is getting good at that little spiel.
Little spiel.
I'm good.
I know.
Thank you. Yeah.
I got to maybe think about getting into radio or something. I do that fake radio voice too. Coach, so I'm going to challenge you on this one a little bit. I know what your answer is going to be already, and I can tell. I'm going to say it. It's just the way we've always done it, or logistics. That's one of your two answers here, but I'm going to challenge you on this one. So you're timing sprints, and I get what you've been saying. Like, when you time, they just seem to have a little bit more gas, you know, when they're running. And I totally understand the psychology of that. You know, and so what I took that a step further. Now, again, I don't have the kind of facility that you have. I'm working with a few athletes right now. I got the just jump out because I was doing some contrast training where I would do like, vertical jump after a trap bar deadlift. And so I just got it so like we would have some numbers and they knew I was kind of the same idea. Talk to me about why you couldn't set up like 3 or 4 just jumps. Pretty easy to set up. They're right on the ground. Pretty easy to it's not rocket science to use. What do you think about that idea? Because I think you talk about the importance of the vertical jump so much over the years. What about that piece of it? Like kind of using like, hey, we're going to make sure we do this every time. We're just going to look at the number.
You know, it's funny. We are doing that. I just haven't talked about it as much.
Oh.
We do it all the time. It's so it was definitely not a we've always done it this way thing.
Okay. Cool. No, I was, I really expected the logistic answer because obviously, to have.
No, it's easy. It's way easier than timing. It's I think it's one of those. The biggest problem with the just jump is that the athletes spend a lot of time trying to figure out how to cheat.
Yeah.
But what I've started to do, the weird thing is now I've started to ignore it. I don't care because when they're trying to cheat, they're actually sort of accentuating their landing. So I just try to get the highest number that you can, as long as it's not like ridiculous in terms of, bringing your knees up to your chest or something.
Yeah.
And we've seen the same. We've seen really big improvements in vertical jump the same way. 10%, it would not be unusual for people in terms of, so adding, 2 inches on a 20-inch vertical jump or 2.5, and someone who's 25 would be, almost pretty normal. Like I said, most of my middle school group that I talk about all the time, most of those kids are over 20 now. And some of them are getting, without, with technique being what it is, getting like 25s and 26s. What we actually started doing is bringing the Vertec out to bring it back to reality a little bit.
Yeah.
But the Vertec is so much slower because you've got to, move the things out of the way and do the math and all this stuff. So it's, we've realized that's not as logistically simple as just yanking out the just jump and doing a couple jumps. So we've got 2, and they're on the floor the vast majority of the time. So great minds think alike. You're right on. I just have not been as intrigued because we've always sort of jumped and always, I thought, done a good job with vertical jump. So I guess I'm not as intrigued with the vertical as I am with the horizontal right now, but we've been working very hard on both.
Yeah. Let me ask you, it's probably a stupid question, but does it really, like you said, you're ignoring the cheating at this point, but for me, almost it's the really important part would be just like, forget about the number, would just be like that intent, right? Devin McConnell?
Exactly. Which is why, exactly, Devin McConnell, which is exactly why it's like Subliminal Man on Saturday Night Live. Every time we say intent, we have to say Devin McConnell quietly underneath it. But there's like, there is just that, okay, try to get the highest number that you can. The difference, and it's funny because, so Brian Mann sent me this speed momentum formula. I don't know if you saw my tweet the other day, but I tweeted out that I was looking for Lewis or Sayers formulas on the, that I could put in my computer, because one of the things, so I've got this woman, Megan Keller, who's one of our best defensemen on our national team, Olympic team. And one day she's vertical jumping and she's kind of like, she makes a face and I'm like, what? Like, what was it? She was like, oh, it's like 21-1. Now she's like 5'11", probably 160. So at 21 isn't really a bad jump. And I'm sort of like, well, what's the highest you've ever jumped? And she's like, actually, I jumped 24 when I was on the U18 team. And now Megan, if you've ever seen her, is very tall and thin, lanky. And my first thought was like, well, what did you weigh as a U18? And she's like, I weighed 115 pounds. I was 5'10", 115.
Wow.
And so I started thinking, wow, I need to find ways that I can quantify, instead of first, like I can say to her, oh, well, actually, you're way more powerful right now, even though, you're moving significantly more weight, even though you're not moving at the same distance. But when you slam that stuff into numbers, it's really easy when you could just put the thing in the spreadsheet and say, okay, here's this, here's your power output, boom, here's your power output before, after. So, but Brian sent me one, this is what I was alluding to, for basically horizontal power. So it was effectively like, in the simplest sense, it was your 10-yard dash speed in meters per second times your body weight. And gives you, as he said, I think it was sprint momentum is technically what the number would be. But it's just a way to quantify, again, as these kids are gaining weight and not getting faster, showing them, hey, yeah, you're still running, 1.4 in the 10, but you've gone from, 130 to 150, and your power output actually is significantly higher. So I think Kevin and I were talking about in the winter seminar, because one of the things what I'm going to talk about in the winter seminar is sort of things that we're doing differently now, timing, trap bar jumps, basically program updates for people who may be thinking about MBSC 3 years ago or 4 years ago or 5 years ago, whatever it is. So it's
cool.
So Brian was cool that he sent that out.
Yeah, and it's funny because I didn't really think about that. And I have Brett Jones on this episode, and we're talking about Pavel's book, The Quick and the Dead. And it's basically about like these power moves. And they talk about, when you're doing your kettlebell swing, same idea, where, okay, just because you have a 16K bell doesn't mean that's going to be the fastest. It's not going to be the best power output, and that's why you use the push monitor. I actually got the push monitor. I actually didn't get it yet. It's coming this week, but I really just want to play around with it and see. Would that be something that you felt like? I mean, just with your pro guys, like if you were back at BU, would you think about doing some of these things a little bit more now that the technology's a little bit better to think about? Yeah, let me put because you did it with the heart rate monitors. You bought 20, 15 heart rate monitors. If you bought, with a team, like I'm not saying with MBSC.
Yeah,
would you think about doing
it's interesting because I think a couple of, 6 months ago or a year ago, I would have said yes. But I think now I'm so sort of enamored of the really high velocity stuff, jumping and sprinting, that I don't know I think the one area where it might have value is in Olympic lifting in terms of really being able to look at bar speed. But I think I've said this before, I think the idea of trying to do slow stuff fast, I'm not sure if I'm into that. Like, trying to deadlift as fast as you can, or trying to squat as fast as you can, or trying to bench as fast as you can.
Yeah.
But it would be interesting to see that. My problem with the push band is we tried it. The push band for me was not particularly user friendly. I couldn't get it to work. I couldn't get the app to work.
How long ago was it?
It was a couple of years ago.
Okay, so yeah, these things update. I wonder, like when I get it, if it will be the same.
I know. I'm going to be. I was just going to say it. I'm going to be really curious to see, because I know I talked to them. And, one of my problems with a lot of the tech companies, because the tech companies are constantly kind of, coming at you like, look at this, try this. And I tell everybody, man, your tech piece needs to be like the iPod was. It's so simple, so intuitive that you can't not figure it out.
Yeah, it's true. That's.
I still remember I got my first iPod, and it was almost as big as the phone I have right now. And I sat down at Christmas, and I had a computer at that time with a disk drive in it that I could put CDs in. And by the end of Christmas morning, so by noontime, I had all the music that I wanted on that iPod.
Yeah.
And it was so ridiculously simple to do. It was one with the wheel. Remember, you'd like spin the wheel?
Yeah, I still have it.
Yeah.
I don't use it, but I still have it.
Click.
Yeah.
But it was but the beauty of what Apple has done in the tech world is that they've, it's like you can give an iPhone to a child and they'll be able to use it.
Yeah. Another thing I liked about, I'm listening, I told you earlier, I'm listening and reading, actually I have both the book and the audiobook, is Never Lose a Customer Again. And he brings up Apple in terms of one of the first things that they did was they had, that iPod was charged when you got it. So remember back in the day, like you had to, and that's like such a disappointment when you get it. And Joey Coleman talks about the different stages as a consumer. Now you've already bought into it. Now you're in this acclimation phase. You get it, and you're like, "Oh man, I was so excited, and now I got to charge it. Are you kidding me?" And they changed that, and I think that never mind tech. I think we all need to think about those things in the process, because we think, oh yeah, when somebody comes into my gym, everything's so easy, and it's not really like that. People are intimidated. They don't know where to go. They don't know what to do. They don't know how they're going to get their program. Whatever. So I think more than tech. But you're right. I'm really interested in seeing how the push band, how user friendly it is. I just got Joel Jamison's Morpheus, and we're gonna have Joel on talking about, I'm training for the Crash Bees again on March 1st, and the rowing competition, and I wanted to just kind of up the ante with like my recovery. So it's interesting to kind of, when you get this technology and they've done a million things to, here's how you ramp up. Here's this, like great pictures, great videos, great everything to kind of ramp you up. So definitely interesting, I think. Mike, what about, we have Andy Galpin on. He's been, next episode, he's been using med balls. What are your thoughts on like figuring out, like, are we throwing those med balls hard enough, or is it just enough to say, break the ball, throw it through the wall, through the ground.
No, I think the idea of those med balls with the trackers in them makes a lot of sense. But what do you realize? It's funny. Pat Stefanski, that works with us today, was asking me about would we buy tendos or push bands or whatever. And at a certain point in time, it just becomes a cost thing in terms of. I told you, because remember, I bought radar guns at one point. Now we were trying to sort of radar gun the med balls just to see, would we be able to. And it didn't, it kind of worked, but it didn't, you know what I mean? It wasn't easy enough to think, all right, we can easily, that's what the beauty of that Brauer timer system is. Once you get it figured out, it's so simple.
Yeah.
And you can, and same thing with the Just Jump. I mean, people always look at me like, how do you use it? I'm like, it says it right on it.
Just jump? That's the most ridiculously easy thing I've ever seen.
Stand on the freaking thing, and, it's like, once you show them, select jump one time, or whatever it is, and then what do? Jump. Just jump. That's what it says. Just jump. You don't have to think of anything else. Just jump and land and look at the thing, and it'll tell you what you did.
Absolutely.
And that, to me, is the beauty. That's good tech.
Yeah.
And even, it's funny that Brauer, if you're listening, but they made the start thing more complicated. And when we went to do Functional Strength Coach 7, I couldn't get it to work because my little block starter for the foot start doesn't have any buttons on it. It has one. It's like an on-off, and that's it. Whereas the new one has 9 buttons, literally numbers 1 through 9, and you select one. And I'm like, when you make things, tech people love to make stuff more techy. And that's why I always go back to Apple people. There's a reason Apple's one of the most valuable companies in the world.
Yeah.
Because they have mastered the art of simplicity. You go back to the Occam's razor idea. The simplest solution is the best solution.
Yep.
And they just keep striving, make it simpler, make it simpler, make it simpler. Make it with less buttons, make it with less, literally, like I said, when you think that a child, you watch the ease at which a child manipulates an iPhone or an iPad, and you think this is the ultimate in tech.
Yeah.
I sound like an Apple head, but I do own some stocks.
True. I should get a couple. I can get a couple sponsors. We got Brauer. I got Push. I got, Joey Coleman's Never Lose a Customer Again. We got some good sponsors ready for this episode. Mike, you did a video. I just wanted to be able to expand on it. Split squat guidelines. Obviously, it's because everybody wants, you're such a proponent of the rear foot elevated split squat that everybody wants to jump that. You're like, whoa, slow down. You're not starting there. You're starting with a regular split squat. Give us your progression for split squats.
Well, it's really interesting because I'm trying to think. Somebody asked me this. They sent me a Twitter message, and I said, "Gee, can I use this as my next video? Because by the time I explain it to you or write it down or whatever, it's a lot easier just to make a 1-minute video." And one of the things that we've realized, because you're right, we've been huge rear foot elevated split squats, or split squat people. But the reality was the beginner, we found our beginners struggled. When we went to rear foot elevated split squat, after say 3 weeks, 3 weeks split squat, boom, rear foot elevated, people really struggled. And they struggled, in body position. When we went from goblet to suitcase, people really struggled. And I started to look at this and think, I guess, do we get ahead of ourselves? So we kind of went with the idea of exhaust goblet split squat. Go with goblet split squat, because the reason we switched, and this is what's interesting when we talk about because that's the way we always did it, we switched to rear foot elevated because my BU guys started complaining about their big toes hurting on their back foot, because we were at that point then we were doing back squat position, regular split squat. Guys were doing, 280 for reps. And after a set of 280 for 10, I'd be like, how was that set? Everything was great, except, man, that my back toe is killing me. And then I thought, yeah, we'll go rear foot elevated. We'll go with the Bulgarian split squat, to use the common, really recognized name. But the only reason we did it was because of the back toe pressure. And that's why we always said to people would put their toe on the bench. I'm like, you can't put your toe on the bench. We always talk about the idea of being laces down, get the foot flat on the bench, because what we were really trying to do was eliminate the big toe.
Yeah.
And so the net result was that the average person doesn't get anywhere near the load that's going to irritate that back big toe. So we realized we could go a lot longer in terms of just staying with split squats and cycling through more of like a conventional undulating periodization kind of thing, 10, 5, 8, 5 sort of thing. You could go 12 weeks of split squats before you ever went to rear foot elevated. So that was kind of what I explained in the post. And I think the good thing is, and I always say this when we talk, everybody learns along with us because we don't have all the answers. I think we just do a better job with questions, and we do a better job of looking and thinking, okay, even though everybody says this works, it probably doesn't work as well as everybody says. And that's when you get back into the idea that, well, who's everybody and do they actually train anybody? You know what I mean? There's all these variables that you've got to look at here. And the good thing for us is we're training a lot of people, and we're training a good range of people in terms of we're training middle school kids, we're training adults, we're training pros, and pros can make you blind in the sense that they're going to do everything way too easy. And so as a result, you're going to think that everything is really easy, and then you try to apply it into a normal, whatever, high school, middle school setting, or into your normal adult setting. And you think, why isn't this going as smoothly as I wanted it to? And you realize it's because I can't really validate training techniques on these really high level groups.
Mike, what about though? I mean, hockey players, that big toe is something that, over the last couple of years, I've seen people really thinking about focusing on some mobility in those toes because of the nature of the skate, because your foot is in there, right? And really focusing, like, we got to make sure they have good ankle mobility. They're tying their skates differently now, right? But did you ever think, like, was that the same for, football players or our general population? Were they feeling the big toe on those heavy?
All I had were hockey players. Yeah. And it's funny now, when you say that now, I look at it and think, I probably should have said, don't worry about it. It's good for you.
Yeah.
Because, but I didn't even think about that. I don't think at the time we were doing this, so if you said, let's say it was 2007, that we probably made that switch over. I don't know if anybody was really talking about big toe mobility as a thing. Do you know what I mean? And something that even mattered. So I just thought, okay, everybody's complaining their toe hurts. Not ever thinking, well, gee, what is the big toe mobility like of the average hockey player? And is this something, should we be worried about doing it more so that we get that versus moving away from it because it bothers them? But you do get into, if you're looking for strength, do you want them to be suffering through the set? So I think in some ways it ended up being a good thing, but it also, when you kind of look at some of the Anna Hartman thing, there's some of like the, heel sits and toe sits and things that we could have done that probably would have been good for those guys in terms of warm up. And we might, if that was the case, we might still be split squatting right now. We might never really worried about the rear foot elevated.
Yeah, I don't know why you didn't just call me, because I usually solve these problems for you. So
I know you usually do. And then where would Marco be? I mean, we wouldn't be a model. He wouldn't be on the cover of all these books. So you got to realize that everything happens for a reason.
There you go. All right, Coach, we will let you go. Thank you for coming on, and we'll talk to you next time.
All right, Ann. Thank you. I appreciate it.
All right, right now at Perform Better, they got the huge holiday sale, up to 30% off. So many items, free shipping on select items as well. Right now on sale, you got sandbags, FMS kits, TRX, all kinds of rollers, kettlebells, dumbbells, so many things. Check it out. That's the huge holiday sale. Also, all the one-day seminars, the presenters, the dates were announced. They're starting off January 11th in Fair Lawn, New Jersey, and they're up to San Fran, LA, Austin, Orlando, Boston, Chicago, Delaware. It's crazy. Check that out at performbetter.com.
Welcome to the Functional Movement System segment. My name is Jenna Gourlay, and today I would like to finish a two-part series about how to use the FMS and the FCS with younger clients. In the last segment, we met Justin, an 11-year-old kid that struggled to get any playing time on his soccer, his basketball, or his baseball team, and really wasn't exactly excited to be training with us. To review, Justin was, as his parents put it, not the most coordinated kid and always falling all over the place. We did his FMS and his FCS testing and found quite a bit that we could work on. He had a 1 on his left for active straight leg raise, a 2 on the right, and the rest of the FMS was 1s except 3s on shoulder mobility. His motor control screen showed asymmetries and deficiencies, and his explosive control was well below the cut. And that was after we finally got a few clean landings. Before that, he was stumbling and falling, and we couldn't even get a good data. So we asked last time, how does this quiet kid, he can't balance on one foot and he doesn't exactly want to come into training, become this kid that jumps way more than his height and refuses to miss a session 1 year out after he got the starting position on his baseball team? Well, it's not simply corrective exercise. Now, we do corrective exercise in the first 5 minutes of a session, but it's to prime the clients or the kids for what's to come. We focus a lot of our time on postures and patterns and creating obstacles for self-learning and for feedback. We work on correcting movement by exposing kids to a challenging environment. A lot of times kids try to rush through and go through activities, but introducing an obstacle within training slows them down and allows them to problem solve and become more self-aware when they're going through the activity. So I remember the first time that I saw Justin do a bear crawl. I had this moment of internal panic when I realized, what if I can't make him better? His butt was 2 feet in the air. He was falling all over the place, and it just looked awkward. I remember thinking to myself, maybe 11 is too young. But children are born ready to explore their environment. This happens as they go through developmental milestones in the neurodevelopmental sequence. Children have this tremendous ability to motor learn when they're given the opportunity to do so. So we had to put Justin and the other clients in difficult or different challenges so that they could get feedback and they could motor learn. That's where the use of obstacles come in. Obstacles such as a balance beam, we're talking like only a ½ inch off the floor, offers a challenge to motor control and gives a ton of feedback in the process. You either stay on the beam or you don't. There's not much guesswork, and we don't really need to give any feedback as coaches because the kids already know how they're doing. This helps them explore balance in different postures and patterns while they're getting that feedback. Now, not only do obstacles provide feedback for motor learning, but so does watching someone else go through the obstacle. Kids learn from watching one another, and the first time that we did bear crawls on the balance beam, Justin sped through it. He was falling off it, and it just didn't go very well. My instinct, of course, was to tell him to slow down, but it's his first time doing it, and I don't want to coach him necessarily right away. So after he gets off the beam, another kid, Brian, gets on the beam, and he approaches it with a much different strategy. He goes slow, and he intentionally works down the beam, gets down the entire thing. Now, I watched as Justin watched Brian do this. So now it's Justin's second turn, and he tries this slower strategy. He gets to the end of the beam, and he's laughing. He's completely surprised by the fact that he didn't even fall off once. He had the same response where he couldn't stop smiling when he retook his FMS and saw how much easier a lot of things were. Now, Brian and Justin were initially very different levels of ability, and I expected this to be a challenge when working with kids, but it was actually an advantage. Justin actually learned from seeing Brian move better. He got to see what a good bear crawl looked like. He saw what a 2 looked like on rotary stability, and he saw how Brian worked through different obstacles. When we did Justin's retest, he wasn't perfect, but he was so much better. He had 2s on active straight leg raise, rotary stability, and hurdle step. His motor control screen went up, and he was able to now jump farther than his height. His mother pulled me aside to tell me the difference that the training had made. She said that she had noticed how much more coordinated he was, but what she was so surprised by was how much more confident he was. I'm smiling now thinking of how happy she was when she told me that he's a completely different kid since he started. I knew at that moment that 11 isn't too young to screen or to use the FMS. Kids have this amazing plasticity that when given the ability to problem solve and to motor learn, they make incredible movement gains. We're constantly looking for ways to get kids off cell phones, right? We sign them up for sports only to have 70% quit by age 13. What if the answer to getting kids to move more is to get them first to move better? The FMS principle, first move well, then move often, holds truer than ever before when it comes to school-age kids. Research consistently shows that children who are more confident in their physical movement move more than those who aren't. So by helping kids move better, we inspire them to move more. If you aren't using the system with young clients, try it. It's not going to be long before you start seeing completely different kids than when you started. That's it for today. My name is Jenna Gourlay, and this has been a Functional Movement System segment. For more information, please check out functionalmovement.com, and thank you for listening.
Hey, this is Zach.
And this is Tim.
Welcome to the TrainHeroic Data-Driven Coaching segment.
Yes.
So last time we kind of inadvertently kicked off a little series we're going to do on resistance training variables.
Continuing that today.
Right. So we got into fatigue and rest, and we realized that this is all really complicated and important, so maybe we should just spend some time on it.
Welcome to episode 2.
So today we're going to start with training volume, and this is kind of tricky because it's all interrelated.
Totally.
But we're going to try to keep it simple.
Mm-hmm.
But Tim, so before we talk about it, we got to define it. So what is training volume?
Yeah, so training volume to me, Adam, I kind of think about this in simple terms. It's you take the sets, you take the reps, you put them together, multiply them, and you come up with total work that you've done in that session.
Sure, yeah, and you might toss that third parameter in there of the weight used,
the load, yeah,
and you get tonnage or volume load in that sense, which has been used in by a lot of people over the years. So
absolutely,
that's a pretty common one.
Okay.
All right, and then why would we want to know anything about volume? Like, why would we keep track of that? Why would we try to calculate it?
Well, it tells you about how much work your people are doing, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, I think about it just, I'm going to prescribe something. This is giving me feedback as to this is what these folks are doing. This is where they're going to be at in their training. Pretty simple. I don't know if that's everything. What do you think?
I mean, yeah, you want to know, I think it is, volume load is okay. It's pretty good for quantifying the amount of work done.
Sure. Right?
As long as you're comparing apples to apples, not like a leg press to back squats, it's going to seem weird there.
Right.
But yeah, it's like that's one way to do it. I think it's also a way to quantify. Let's just switch gears for a second and say, what does a runner keep track of? Well, everybody knows how many miles they run a week.
Right, distance,
right? Yeah. It's an overall kind of like measure of both the stress and probably to some extent the predicted like adaptation, right? So why do we do more over time in strength training specifically, right?
Right.
To get bigger or stronger. Or more powerful, but we're kind of talking about strength hypertrophy specifically.
Sure, yeah.
And so you might think, like, people, like, oh, yeah, that volume is related to those things.
Right? Yeah, I mean, that's how I think about it. I think maybe it's probably not just me, but we live in this kind of culture where, the more you do, the bigger you're going to get. Right. And that's been, dragged along for a long time. Sure. But there's some more interesting research coming out, you know what I mean?
So like specifically around kind of defining volume and what it means. Like, so if I ask you, like, what is the hypertrophy range?
8 to 12 reps, Adam.
Yeah, don't do 13.
No, can't
get anywhere that way.
Nope.
All right, so you would think by that, so by the calculation we just did a second ago, if I do 3x8 versus 3x12, right? Yeah. Like, which group would grow more probably? Based on your underlying assumption that more volume is better.
The 3x12 group, you're doing more volume.
Yeah. What about 3x20 then?
The underlying assumption would say that you're probably going to grow more, but obviously it was something with that much, that much volume, that many reps, you're risking some other things, right? Are you doing a compound movement or a single joint movement, right? That's going to really depend. Do you want to scare your people away? Like with 3 sets of 20 reps of clean and jerks, you know what I mean? Like, no.
That's just silly.
Yeah, there's more things that come into play there at 3x20, but the underlying assumption would be, probably grow a little bit more.
No, yeah. If you wrote me a program and said, hey, this will totally work.
Yeah.
And it's 3x20 back squats 3 days a week, I would run away.
Yeah, not good for business.
All right.
Okay.
So there's practical reasons you might do that, but like research based on what we do know, it's actually pretty similar. The growth across those conditions would be pretty similar, right?
Okay.
And so it seems more related to the number of like hard sets that you do than it does to like that volume load measure.
Sure.
While it is a measure of like physical work, like each rep is like burning some energy, right?
Right.
It doesn't really accurately get at what's going on inside the muscle.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so like if we like kind of revisit the size principle briefly, right?
Right.
Just generally speaking, it's the idea that like as you go on a set, you recruit more fibers
as you draw closer to fatigue,
right? Better recruitment,
pulling more in,
and then at the end, when you're getting closer to failure, you recruit like the higher threshold ones,
sure.
Right? And so like there's an interplay between the weight used, right? A 20 rep max is really light. I can't just do one rep.
Yeah.
Right. I'm going to be 19 reps shy of failure, and I can do that with a very small portion of my muscle fibers.
Yeah, absolutely.
Versus like when I do like a heavy, like I do a single with my 3 rep max.
Yeah.
There's really good recruitment, like probably pretty much full from the start.
Right.
And so there's an interplay between those two variables, but on a per set basis, it's pretty similar.
Got it.
And now there's like some other stuff we don't know about this, right? Which is like, well, we'll talk about this next time. How close to failure do I have to be?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's interesting.
So is it true, do you think, that like, why do we 3 sets? Is that better than 2? Is that better than 1?
I mean, I think this gets back up to where we kind of started about like optimizing your training, right? I mean, I think there's as you do your first set, it's good, it's great, right? You do your second set, it's even a little bit better. Your third set, maybe a little bit more, but then it starts to taper a little bit, right? This is called dose response, right?
Right.
You're giving them a proper amount of dose, and after a little bit, it's going to diminish a little bit.
So you get diminishing returns there.
Right.
And 3 sets, for a lot of people, is kind of a sweet spot. So
yeah.
And it fits into the time you have to train.
Bingo. Constraints.
That's going to do it for us today. Go to TrainHeroic.com to start your 14-day free trial. When you're talking to one of our representatives, tell them the Strength Coach podcast sent you for 10% off a year of the Pro or Elite Edition.
All right, now it's time for the Results Fitness University Business of Fitness segment. I am here with Rachel Cosgrove. Rach, thanks for doing this.
Thank you for having me. Always fun to be on.
All right. Well, we had actually a question on the strengthcoach.com forum, and actually Alan had answered it on the forum as well. Like, we've had a bunch. This always comes up. Everybody always has different ideas about this, but it was, is there a good rule of thumb for how much and how often a gym can increase membership prices? So I want to just have a caveat here too as well. There's 2 kinds of people. There's the new people that are coming in, and then there's people that have already been in there. So just make sure to remind everybody that we're not really always talking about an increase with the current members. We're talking about increases with new members, right?
Yeah, and that's a good point. I mean, I think that's, first of all, deciding, are you going to increase on your current people, or is this going to be, just for new people coming in? And so that's definitely something to figure out. We personally at Results Fitness, we never increase prices on existing members. So members who have joined 20 years ago, believe it or not, are still on the same membership prices of when they first joined. So that's definitely something to think about. I think rule of thumb, I think every year you should think about increasing your prices. And if you're not going to increase your price, the other way to do it is to change what you're giving for that price. So, definitely though, each year, if you're not increasing your prices or changing what you're offering, cost of doing business goes up every single year. So, as we all know, cost of life goes up every year. So, over time, and especially, for us now, we've been in business 20 years. If we didn't raise our price each year in small increments, then we would have to make a huge adjustment, which is a lot more uncomfortable to have to make a huge adjustment to, catch up with the cost of doing business than to each year raise your prices. So I think every single year you should raise your prices. A good time to do it is when it is a busy time, so for us, it's always January, February, or in the fall after summer when everyone's coming back from summer vacations. So when people are joining gyms. And so you set a date, you say this day, we're going to be raising our prices, and you let everyone know. Like we always let all of our current clients know. That way but we let them know this won't affect you, but, let any of your friends and family know. So it can become, a referral. They'll bring people in before the prices go up. So any of their friends and family, you're a VIP, we want to take care of you, bring people in. And so they get people signed up beforehand. And then, and then it builds loyalty. So then your current members see that you do increase your prices every year. It could be a 3 to 5% increase, and their prices aren't going up. So then it builds loyalty for them, because what we do is as long as they renew within a 30-day period, they keep their current prices. And so they never, if they leave, and we have absolutely had clients leave, go try other gyms, and they come back and they're on our current prices. And so I think that's just, for your business in the long term, if you don't get in the habit of every year raising your prices, what will end up happening, we did actually go a couple years where we didn't raise the prices, and we realized, oh my gosh, minimum wage goes up, insurance goes up, everything goes up. So when you don't increase your prices, all of a sudden you realize, my profit and loss is not looking so hot. And, we need to raise our prices, and then you got to do a big jump. So I think every year it's a good idea to do it. Your clients get used to it, and then they know as long as they stay, they get to keep their prices. And it really builds, I think a good loyal culture. The only thing I would say is sometimes it does get, for us, like right now, Most common membership is $297 a month. Obviously, going over that $300 a month mark is a different ballgame. So instead of increasing that price, we went from offering unlimited unlimited classes to only 2 classes a week. So that's another way to do it. You don't always have to, if you feel like the price point is working, the $297 price point or whatever price point you're at is working really well for conversions. And maybe you don't want to necessarily, go over, because some of those numbers can make a big difference if all of a sudden you're now $300 and something. So instead you can change what you're offering to basically be, you gave yourself a raise, you're making more per session, but you're not actually charging more.
Yeah. And do you mention that to people, like say, hey, listen, next year, we are no longer going to offer unlimited. So get your friends in here now because we're going to 2 times a week. Did you do that?
Yeah, I think anytime you're making a change like that, it's good to communicate it. I think that's something that our clients, why they trust us so much is because anytime we're doing anything, we always, shout it from the rooftops and make sure everybody knows, so it's never like a secret, yes, we are raising our prices. Yes, the cost of business is going up and, we want to keep up with it and we want to be here for the long term. So it's part of doing business. So bring your friends in now because you're my VIP and we want to take care of your people, Yeah.
And I think if you're going to raise them on your current clients, if that's the way you go, people do know, like, look, rent, my contract for rent was a 3% increase every year. Okay. Now, it's not the end of the world. If we looked at a $300 membership, really that's what, it's $9. Okay.
Right.
But again, there's a whole psychology there between $297 and $306, right? We both know that.
Yeah, it's funny, right?
Yeah. But
like I'm good with $297, but $306, forget it.
Yeah, and we did in episode 261. We talked about how to figure out what your memberships are. But I heard a great thing about when I was like looking into like owning a coffee bar in the 90s. I went to a lecture and the guy was talking about prices and he said, there's one reason why Starbucks can charge $1.50. That's at the time. That's how much coffee was there. $1.50 for a cup of coffee, which was expensive. He said, the one reason why they do it is because they can. And the reason why they can is because they've basically got to that number where they finally got a little bit of resistance and they kept it there. So they keep going up a little bit until they get resistance. That they really do a lot of research with that and kind of see how their clients are feeling. So, your clients a lot of times are going to understand a $10 increase, a year, but they're not going to understand a $50 increase.
Yeah. And that's the problem is if you don't increase every year, you're going to get yourself in a position where you have to go, a big jump. And then that can get hard for a member to refer someone to you when you're now charging, $50 more than what they're paying or, so it can get, So the other thing to just, make sure, like when we have made the mistake of grandfathering in. So a lot of our current members who've been with us since the beginning, as we added more services, like we added group classes and we added unlimited coaching and we kept giving them everything. And so, like you mentioned, if you are going to have to, if sometimes we do realize as business owners that, whoops, I made a mistake, like I'm charging these people too little, or I'm giving them too much for what they pay. And we did that. We, because we had grandfathered our original people in with everything we were offering, I had to go back and just have a face-to-face conversation with each of them and say, listen, we can't sustain what we're currently giving you for the price you're paying. And so, we're going to go ahead and, instead of giving you unlimited coaching and classes, you're going to get 2 sessions a week. We're still never going to raise your existing prices like we promised you from the beginning.
Yeah.
So sometimes you do have to have those difficult conversations and just, keep an eye on your business and make sure, that you're not giving away too much for what they're paying because you can't afford to, and I know, I think all of us love what we do and it's so easy to get yourself into that position where you're not charging enough and you're giving everything, way more than you probably should be for the prices that you charge. So it's always good to evaluate that, have those honest conversations. I think the more upfront and honest you are and the more clear you are, and it's always about, our other big one is always making sure that no one's going to join today and no one's going to join after you that's going to get a cheaper price than you. So if you join today, you're not, you're going to get the cheapest price there is. You're going to get the least expensive price. You're going to get the most value for your money. We're never going to undercut you. And I think that also builds that long-term trust.
Yeah, absolutely. Good stuff. And I want to remind people, next episode, we're going to talk about a little bit about offering your employees, a health services, health savings account, or some of the benefits that, health insurance. And hey, that adds to your expenses as well. It's not just, hey, we're paying them. So we're going to talk about that next episode. So Rach, thanks for doing this.
Thanks for having me. And yeah, if anyone would like to come out and hang out with us, we actually have our next mentorship coming up in February. So head over to resultsfitnessmentorship.com and we're taking applications. So head over there and we hope to see you.
All right, now it's time for the BodyByBoyleOnline.com. Hit the gym with the Strength Coach segment. Become an insider to Mike Boyle's strength and conditioning with staff meetings, in-services, and complete access to the MBSC programs. All right, today I have on someone who I usually have on the FMS segment. Today we got on Brett Jones. He's StrongFirst Director of Education. He's also a certified athletic trainer, a strength and conditioning specialist. He's based out of Pittsburgh. And he's taught the functional movement systems with functional movement systems since 2006. Done a bunch of DVDs and manuals with Gray, and including the Secrets of series, which are some of my favorite DVDs. Not sure if anybody gets DVDs anymore. I think they're just streaming stuff. So, Brett, thanks for coming on.
And it's wonderful to have the opportunity to speak to the Strength Coach audience. Really appreciate the opportunity.
All right. Yeah. Obviously, like I said, we always get you on for FMS, but once in a blue, we get you on to talk some strength and conditioning. And I wanted to get your take on, because I did buy Pavel's book, The Quick and the Dead. And I think, I was really interested in this whole StrongEndurance program, and I wanted to talk to you guys about it and see, because I think, with interval training too, we've really kind of, gone there. The pendulum has swung so far towards almost like these 1-to-1 work to rest ratios. And there's been so much talk about really, not having enough rest. And so I wanted to kind of dial it back and get an overview of what you guys are doing. First, let's just go over the StrongEndurance program and what you guys are doing with that.
Sure. So StrongEndurance is a workshop that Pavel teaches that covers a lot of higher level concepts. A lot of it is Quick and the Dead is based off of a lot of the StrongEndurance information. It's a narrow focus, though, as Pavel puts it, the advanced minimalist for the training focus. But the concepts are part and parcel of the StrongEndurance program. And basically what happened was just shy of 6 years ago now, Pavel had released Simple and Sinister and was looking at his next book project. And he was asking some of us within the community, what do you want to see a book on? And so we were like, conditioning. And it's actually a subject that Pavel hates. And so, but he's like, okay, so that's what I'll do. I'll start researching this concept of conditioning, and I'll knock out a book in a few months. Well, 5.5 years later, The Quick and the Dead came out. And in that time, the StrongEndurance workshops started with Pavel kind of laying out some of the things that he had begun researching. And, Pavel doesn't just, he goes deep. If he's going to get into a subject, he takes the deep dive. And so he was reading biochemistry journals and researching mitochondria, and really took the deep dive into these concepts on conditioning and what we're actually doing within the body, and kind of centering in on this idea that the mitochondria are very important, not just in the concepts of energy production and things of that nature, but they're kind of important to just us being living beings. So they're so that was kind of the nexus. That was kind of the starting point. And then as he went down these rabbit holes of what the American research was showing versus the Russian research. And, like I said, looking at all these different journals, the strong endurance protocols started to kind of shake out of this. And I think for me, when I was at the first strong endurance seminar, and obviously I'd been talking to Pavel about this a good bit and behind the scenes. And it was funny when the Quick and the Dead came out, I'm like, oh, finally it's out. Like I can talk about it. I've been reading versions of this for the last 2 years, and it's good to be able to have it out so I can talk about it. But the question I walked away from the first strong endurance seminar was, what's the cost? Everything we do within our body has a cost. What is the cost of your training from a metabolic, from an energetic, from a waste product perspective? What is the cost? And I think it's a very different conversation than most people are used to asking. We tend to, I don't know, as I think I've said quite a few times, rest is the most abused training protocol. We love it when something burns. We love it when something is difficult. But difficult doesn't necessarily mean it's moving you in a good direction. It just means it's difficult.
Yeah, I totally agree, and I think it's funny because you see it so many times that people are like, wow, that was such a great workout. So that's something that we are kind of fighting with some of and the rest periods. I think sometimes feel like they're forever, right? Even a 2-minute rest period. And everybody claims that they don't have the time, but and it's why it's funny because we had Andy Galpin on recently, and he was talking about this. It's like why some of these real power weightlifting guys, they're in the gym for 3 or 4 hours because they're really following the rest protocols that science calls for. And I think we've missed that boat.
Well, and I remember, I've been 25 plus years in doing this, and I remember when high intensity interval training really came to the forefront. There were a couple of studies, talking about how you could get as much aerobic benefit as the long drawn out, long slow cardio, long slow distance as it used to be known. You could get just as much benefit in 15 minutes of high intensity intervals versus your 45 minutes of long slow distance and things of that nature. And I followed one of those protocols. I mean, I did a very intense high intensity training protocol, lost a bunch of weight, thought it was great. But like any crash diet or any extreme situation, it's not sustainable. The cost of that training is so great that your body cannot sustain it over time. And a lot of conditioning protocols have focused on the concept of building tolerance versus building capacity. And so, your lactate threshold, you're going to hit this point where the burn sets in, and, can you build your tolerance and keep going in the presence of the burn has been where some of the conditioning protocols have been stuck, I would say. Just saw an article yesterday by Joel Jamieson about kind of the pitfalls of high intensity training and high intensity interval training. And it really does circle back to this concept of what's the cost. And when you look at the energy systems, whether creatine phosphate, glycolytic, and then alactic aerobic metabolism, we have these different energy systems they're at play at various amounts, and they're in play at various amounts at all times. But one of the great regulators of how they're being distributed and when they kick in and fade and things of that nature is intensity. And intensity is not a turned around baseball cap. It's the output. It's the power you're producing. So it's the output, not the effort, is how Pavel likes to put it. And so at a very high power output, you see very quick increase in lactic acid, and that that's a whole chemistry course in and of itself. It's not the lactate; it's the acid that comes along with it that's the problem. And so you have this incredibly quick accumulation of hydrogen ions that occurs at a very high when you're at a high power output. So you really have this the CP system is doesn't last long. 7 to 10 seconds, you get a lot of what you're going to get out of there. Glycolytic kicks in, but it's also short burning, topping at it between 10 to 15 seconds, 10 to 20 seconds. And then hopefully aerobic metabolism is kicking in. The CP system is pretty clean, but slow. There's not a lot of it in reserve, so it has to be replaced. The aerobic metabolism, once it kicks in, is very efficient and produces a lot of energy. It's that middle system, the glycolytic system, that is predominantly responsible for the burn, so to speak, and this accumulation of hydrogen ions. And how your body clears and deals with these waste products is the direction we prefer to take, is in building your capacity to deal with those waste products and get them out and maintain efficient metabolism and function within the mitochondria, versus just dealing with the congestion and this accumulation and the resultant burn and damage that you get.
Yeah, and I think there's also this confusion, like you had said before. There was like when the HIIT stuff was really getting popular, the high intensity training was talking about, you can do this training and it will substitute for these 45-minute sessions, right? This 15, I think it was even less. It was the Tabata really stuff that started it, right? Like, oh, you can do these Tabata sessions and they're going to equal whatever for long distance trainers, cyclists, whatever, they did it. So when you say strong endurance, I mean, are we talking about, because what I've really gotten out of this was this idea about, really, I guess, power endurance, right? I mean, instead of just saying, okay, yeah, you can do this training, you're going to run a marathon, or is this the same idea as, quote unquote, the endurance training that people traditionally know?
Right. So it turns out when you look at how different styles of training, whether it's endurance, it's power, things of that nature. And I'm turning to my kind of Quick and the Dead book as I'm sitting here talking. And when you look at things like aerobic power and hypertrophy, power training delivers across the spectrum. Now, you might get a little bit more aerobic benefit out of pure endurance work, but power delivers almost the same benefit, just at a lower cost, so to speak. And you also get strength and power that comes along with it. So there's benefits to focusing on the high power output, and all of these things that can come along with it. Now, part of the making sure that everything comes along with it is resting long enough and avoiding as much as possible this glycolytic situation. And it's not to say that you never go glycolytic. Those are peaking strategies that help you get ready for an event. Like if I was preparing for the SFG1 and I had to do the snatch test, then I would have a peak involved to optimize that glycolytic reaction as well. But over too much of that creates a variety of problems. And the ultimate direction that a lot of this took Pavel was really enhancing the health benefits of the training that you're doing. It is still called health and fitness, and you can't divorce the two. And so making sure that your training is actually providing the health side of the health and fitness. There's a way to do that at a low cost, and that's understanding the cost of your training, but then also understanding how to get the maximum for the lowest cost. We all understand that very well if we're talking about investing money, but our bodies and our training can be the same way.
Yeah, I think it's an easy sell to trainers. Obviously, we're thinking, okay, yeah, we get it. We have to periodize. We want to think like on different levels, like not periodize, but we want to think a different micro and macro level. Okay, yeah, we know we need to. We're trying to preach that rest. We're trying to preach having light, medium, heavy days. And understanding the importance of sleep and nutrition as fuel, et cetera. It just seems obviously more of, because I've been doing the quick and the dead workouts, and I absolutely love them personally, because I think with your training Wavy system, we're going to get to in a second. I feel like for example, on Mondays, I train with a client. We go heavy on like a bunch of deadlifts, and we're training for a rowing competition on March 1st. So we're going to do like some intervals on the rower. Like this is going to be my high intensity stuff. And then tomorrow, almost as a recovery, like a light Wavy piece of it, I will do quick and dead for 2 to 3 sets, depending on how I feel. And the way that's been working for me is I feel so great, because I feel like I got something in, I still got some good power training in, and I didn't beat myself up. It was easy to do. I didn't feel like, oh man, I got to get to I actually look forward to it. So I guess let's segue this into just explain what your concept of training Wavy is as well.
Well, it's a couple different directions. I remember in February of 2002 when I was at my first cert with Pavel, and the saying that was provided was from, I was told at the time, it was Nordic cross-country skiing community, only the mediocre are at their best all the time. And so unless you're peaking and recovering, or at least purposefully modifying what you're doing in your training, you're not at the bleeding edge of the razor all the time. And so your training needs to reflect this cyclical nature. Pavel has it in the book that a quote that nature to be commanded must be obeyed, and life is cyclical. There's rhythms to most everything that happens in our lives and in our bodies. And so I like to joke that you can do the same thing all the time as long as you don't do the same thing all the time. I'm a fan of oxymoronic statements. And so that sort of looking at what you did the day before, you can select the exact same exercises, just make it look different. And Pavel talks about it in the book, and part of what we do is this kind of Delta 20 principle, that there needs to be at least kind of a 20% difference in what you're doing. And you see that reflected in the quick and the dead programming, where you roll the die and you're doing 60, 80, 100, 120, whatever the case may be, total reps. And then the next roll, when you're selecting and rolling the die for your next day's or whatever programming, that's going to be built in there. So most people think that if they did 100 one day, that 105 is more and 95 is less, and that's just not enough variation. So if you do 100 total reps on one day, the least you're going to go down is 80, and very acceptable to go further down than that. And the most you're going to go up from there, you need to go at least up by 20. And so you start surfing these ranges of, maybe my first day is 100 total reps. And then, and I'll apply this to some grinds here in just a minute, because it's basically the same concept. But if if I do 100 reps on the first day, I might do 60 reps on the next day, and then I might do 120, and then I might do 80, and so I try to create these wide, almost random variations in what I'm doing. And this just works with the cyclical nature of the body. It enhances recovery. You're it's just a fantastic way to look at day-to-day programming. And Pavel, coming from a military background, had talked for a long time about what he referred to as tactical periodization, and this idea that if you're LEO, first responder, military, and you need to train at the same time that you're still going out and doing your job, which could be various nighttime walks in various sandy locations. It could be a law enforcement officer that needs to be able to respond appropriately, or a first responder that needs to be able to help somebody at a car accident. You're still doing your job. And so if your training takes on that mindset of you need to be crushed or destroyed in order to think you accomplished anything, I pity the people that are putting their lives in your hands, because when you're destroyed and you can't do your job well, that impacts other people. And so the training is something that, consistency over time provides these tremendous results without having to feel destroyed, without taking away from what you need to be doing in your daily life. And so if we apply kind of that waviness to the grinds, military press program, kettlebell military press program that I was on recently, I was doing, my heavy day was 5 ladders of 1, 2, and 3 at whatever weight. My light day was 5 singles at that weight. And then my medium day was 5 ladders of 1 and 2. And so you have, if you take the 6 reps times 5 that we would have done on the heavy day, 30 total reps per arm. The easy day would have been 5 reps total per arm, and the medium day would have been 30 total reps per arm. And so you can again see this wide variation.
Medium day would be 15, right? 2 and 1 times 5.
What 3?
1 and 2.
Yes, you got it. 15.
Yeah.
Sorry, I was trying to think and do math at the same time, and that never works out for me.
It's only because I read your article right before this interview, the one you have on StrongFirst with this. So don't worry, I wasn't that up on it either.
So that gives you these, you're 50% of the volume that you were doing on the heavy day, and you're way less than that on the light day. And so there's this wide variation in what you're doing, and it's the classic, somebody that's been going in the gym and doing the same thing for 5 years, 6 years. Well, they stop seeing results after the first year, but they don't know where to go from there. And I think people fear having easy days. I like easy days.
Yeah.
Just part of my makeup. I enjoy the hard days. I enjoy the easy days. But that's just an example of that concept of the waviness you should see that variation between days, between weeks, between months, and have this tremendous variation to what you're doing.
Yeah, I like, again, training for this event, this rowing event on March 1st, and it's my 4th year doing it. And I can tell you, when you have to train it this much, so 4 days of rowing and then 3 days of strength training, and basically I trained every day last week because of the quick and the dead, because Tuesday was the only thing, that was what I did. I just did 3 rounds, and it's super, to me, it's super easy in terms of, I don't feel exhausted. I feel excited to go into it. I feel good. Like you said, other times I don't feel so great about those light days, but when I'm that much more consistent, when I know I'm doing 6 days a week or maybe 7 right now for the next couple of months, that light day I look forward to it. I enjoy it, and it's an important piece in maintaining as well for me now, maintaining that power.
Without a doubt, it enhances recovery. There's so many benefits to having that light day in there and the consistency, and it just moves everything forward in a really unique way.
Yeah, cool. Give us an overview of quick and dead and the two main exercises that you're pushing it in. Because once again, you guys come up with another program that only involves 2 exercises. It makes it super easy. And talk to us about this the quick and the dead program.
So the basics are we needed a pull and a push, basically. And so we pretty quickly centered in on the idea that the swing would be an exercise, great power exercise that's accessible to a lot of people, that they could do proficiently, without huge restrictions on them. And then for the upper body push, and boy, we looked at a bunch of different options, and the classic kind of power push up. Again, we're looking for that high power output. And so those two just kind of quickly centered in. You'll see in the book the Viking push press and dips, and there's a couple other suggestions that were worked into the program by various folks and this protocol was in testing for 4 years, 3.5, 4 years with various folks. But for simplicity's sake, and that is that advanced minimalist concept, the swing and the power push-up became the 2 exercises of choice. You do see in there that there's the option to do the work-rest ratios, the repeated series that's recommended in the programming with snatch only, kettlebell snatch only. Tremendous high-power drill, really kind of one-stop shopping that I used to get ready. I was training for our SFL. And so before I would go do my barbell work, I would actually do 60 to 120 snatches using the quick and the dead style protocol. And that left me really well prepared to go do my barbell training. So that was kind of where things shook out, the snatch being kind of a minimalist perspective.
Yeah, I did. I actually on Friday I had my kind of medium intervals, like 1,000 meter rows, and so I only right now it's early in the training, so I'm only doing 2 of those right now. So I did quick and the dead 3 rounds as almost like a power portion before that, and I felt great on the erg going into it. So I still felt good because I was able to get some power work in there, and then do my rowing training and not feel like, oh man, that took away from the rowing.
Right, and I think Joe DeLeo, one of our instructors who does a lot in the rowing community, has been using some of these protocols we have a couple different protocols. We have what we call A&A protocols, alactic aerobic protocols, which are even more generous in the rest work to rest ratios than some of the other repeats that we do within the quick and the dead would be called a repeat interval series. So our A&A programming is, and I love it. You can ballpark it as simple as 5 reps at the top of the minute. So you're getting about 10 seconds, 8 to 10 seconds of high power work. You get about 50 seconds of recovery, and rinse and repeat for upwards of 30, 40, 50 minutes. Like you can just keep going, which is awesome for building what can be termed work capacity and just energy production capacity. Versus the repeat interval series where we're pushing enough to get a little different response out of the body. We accumulate enough acid so the body has to deal with it, and that spurs various functions as far as the mitochondrial health and aerobic and even hypertrophy sort of reactions. And Pavel talks about that in the book as far as the fast 10s concept being a really good hypertrophy sort of protocol. And we saw that happen with multiple people testing the program, where they would switch from the 4 sets of 5 repeat interval series to 2 sets of 10 repeat interval series. And they would kind of see some hypertrophy and some gains during the 10s, and they'd lose it on the 5s. So it was just kind of interesting to see people have those responses and results.
Yeah, I've mixed it up from the perspective of sometimes like from my shoulder health, just with the power push up, and I've actually and you and I mentioned this to you, and I don't know if you approved, but what I was doing was what I am doing is sometimes I throw these like a med ball jump, chest pass med ball jump, like simulating the push up really fast. 5 to 10, depending on, what I'm doing that day. But so like I might do 10 push-ups in the first round and then go to 10 med ball just to save my shoulders a little bit, and make it easy on the trainer, because it's very easy for me to just to throw that med ball into a wall. Boom, there I go. I'm done. And I feel like I'm not getting the same as a push-up, but it feels good. It feels like I'm getting some power work in there with the med ball.
Sure. And I think that the important thing is, as long as you're maxing out the power and respecting kind of the repeat interval series, work rest ratios, there's a lot of things that fit in here. Like these protocols actually work really well with sprinting. An old protocol is a 15-second all-out sprint every 3 minutes. That's a pretty generous work to rest ratio. And so it's from a training perspective, it just allows you to have, and the way you've phrased it has just been great. You get to have these high power moments, but you feel like better because of what you've done, not destroyed.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think with the med ball stuff, and again, you mentioned this a little bit earlier. I wanted you to talk a little bit about it. It's not a regular swing. You didn't mention that. It's not a regular swing. We're trying to go. I'm almost trying to push down. Imagining somebody's pushing down on the bell on the way down to get the intent. Same thing. Again, it's like a traditional, like really the intent is to go as fast as I could. It's obviously same thing with the med ball. Can you just touch on that for a minute?
Yes. So what you're referring to is what we call an over speed eccentric, or a kind of a spiked swing, where using the lats, reconnecting to the body, really accelerating the bell into the eccentric, so that we get a much more powerful concentric turnaround. The key is it can't, and this is where they start to confuse RPMs or reps per minute with power. And so the swing starts to lose its power and efficiency because you're trying to go too fast. It's the difference between throwing a ball and trying to throw the ball, right? When you see somebody just kind of rear back and shoot it out of the cannon, and it doesn't look like they were trying that hard, that was a high power throw. When they tense up and they try to throw the ball, it doesn't go anywhere. And so as long as you're staying on the side of this crisp athletic power that looks effortless, you're probably in that high power zone. If you're transitioning into kind of the panic mode where you're trying to artificially max out the RPMs, you can run into some problems there. But that overspeed eccentric, I think, is really unique to swings, snatches, kettlebell training in general, with the benefits of the thick handle offset center of mass that allows you to really crank up that power production. And it does, I've seen it on force plate and with things like the push band and monitoring and looking at power production.
Yeah, Brett, that's what I want to finish up with is the push band, because, I just mentioned this idea about intent. Okay. And you do need a lot of focus. And if you are a trainer and you're working with somebody, You don't know what's going on in their brain. You don't know if they're really pushing it. They're really going as fast as you can. And the push, and like I said to you earlier, this interview might put me over the top, and it might cost me $300. This interview alone, because I almost bought it when I got Quick and Dead first, and I talked myself out of it. I'm like, just play with it first, play with the program first. And I saw a video of you using that, using the push, and you guys are selling them now. It's on the forearm. So what did you find, and how much better was the training with the push? And were you surprised about anything?
It was very interesting to begin to monitor the power and the velocity, and to think I was doing something when the numbers would show me that I wasn't. One of the things that we look for is, and we call them our stop signs. So one of our stop signs on any set, on any rep, is if power or velocity goes down. Well, you can think you're monitoring that correctly with your feelings, or you can use a device to actually monitor it and look for more than a 10 to 15% drop in a high power exercise is probably reason to stop. And so what it validated for me was the work rest ratios, the protocols. I actually had to set up a more high intensity situation to find the power drop off in a workout, because the strong endurance or quick and the dead style intervals and work rest ratios, I didn't find the power drop off because I was recovering well between my sets. So it just kind of validated this idea that I can keep my power output high and not find that 10 to 15% drop off in power production because of these work rest ratios. And it was kind of cool to track, power and velocity and compare notes with some folks on what they were getting out of similar size bells. But then I ran into something really similar, and this will be coming out in an upcoming article. I repeated, I recently had my knee scoped at the end of September, had a meniscal tear that had actually been there for over 15 years. And over the last 18 months had been progressing not in the right direction. And so I had done a workout in November of last year, and then repeated that same workout in June or July. And from a perception standpoint, I compared two different workouts from those months. One was a 48 kilo swing workout. One was a 56 kilo swing workout, just separated by X number of months between completing them. And so from a perception standpoint, I would have told you those were the same workouts. Like, they felt great. I then looked at my numbers and I was like, oh no, power's down, velocity's down. And it wasn't just like, a couple sets were off. All the sets were off. Like my low was lower and my high wasn't as high when I repeated the workout. And that just kind of validated to me that you're compensating around this knee, around this situation, and you need to go ahead and get it taken care of. So it's interesting. I am not enamored of big data or data, potato, however you want to go. But tracking things like the power production velocity turned out to be really useful for me. Now I had the similar but opposite experience with something Pavel now has out in Simple and Sinister 2.0, the second edition or revised and updated edition of Simple and Sinister, what he refers to as timeless, and really not looking at the clock, just tracking total time to get a certain workload done. So Sinister obviously is 10 sets of 10 one-arm swings with a 48 kilo, and just start tracking how long rest freely past the talk test between your sets, and track your total time. Saw tremendous results. And so, kind of changing my perspective on a few things and tracking, in one way, tracking less and not going by such set work rest ratios. And in the other hand, tracking more, looking at power and velocity, both of those things were very revealing to me and provided a lot of training info.
Very cool. Now, there's one last question on that, because I was just thinking, there's obviously going to be some people for, let's say, like MMA fighters, et cetera, who might want to go even longer. If you're not losing power after, let's say there's, you do 6 rounds of this, of the quick and the dead, which really would be what, 36 minutes, right? Because it's 3 minutes of the swings and 3 minutes of the push-ups, 3 minute swing, 3 minutes push-ups, right? So that's 6 minutes each one. If you wanted to keep going, if you had that data to know, like, hey, we're not losing any power, keep going. And when you start losing it, you're done.
Well, the danger there is you can start messing with or tapping into the variability or waviness that we were talking about earlier.
Yeah.
You kind of want to optimize what the die or what the program told you to do for that day, and then know that the next day is going to be different, and you'll have a different opportunity with the way the next day turns out. So the danger in I can keep going is you then have to more self-regulate. The next session needs to be a little bit different. Ben Johnson, his track coach, if he peaked in anything, it was time to back off. Like it just so that could be an indication that you're peaking too soon, and you might actually need to really change your training. So there's a few different variables there that get thrown in. So I would say trust the program.
Yeah, absolutely. Good stuff. I'll recommend everybody. Absolutely. I really enjoyed the Quick and Dead. It's a super easy read. It's a super easy program with just some great results. And I think, like I said, I'm probably going to get the push to see really where I am at, and if I'm falling off, and see how my power production is staying through that. But highly recommended. Obviously, I highly recommend anything StrongFirst does. I have always loved what you guys do with coaching, and I always learn so much when I either go to a workshop or a seminar or talk to Brett Jones. So, Brett, thanks for doing this.
Thank you so much, Anthony. It's been great to have the chance to chat about it. And like I said, it's been something that we've been actually experimenting and doing behind the scenes for a few years now. And it's great to be able to finally talk about it and really promote it and put it out there. And it's made, I would say, timeless. The timeless concept and the quick and the dead style programming have made tremendous impacts for me personally and my clients, students. So it's just great to have the chance to chat about it.
All right, that's going to do it for episode 270 of the Strength Coach Podcast. Remember, you can try strengthcoach.com out 3 days, just $1. You'll have access to all the articles, videos, and programs, as well as the best forum on the net. It's the only place to have full access to Coach Boyle. He's on every day. To access that offer, go to strengthcoach.com. Click the Join Now button to get started on your trial. Special thanks to Chris Pryor and the folks over at Perform Better. Remember, huge holiday sale right now, up to 30% off and free shipping on select items. Don't forget, the one-day seminars start January 11th in Fair Lawn, New Jersey. Check it out at performbetter.com. Thanks to Coach Boyle and Brett Jones for sharing their insights and philosophies into the world of strength conditioning and performance enhancement. Thanks to Adam Doughty and Tim Robinson and TrainHeroic. Head over to TrainHeroic.com and start your free 14-day trial. Let them know I sent you. You'll save 10% off your first year of the TrainHeroic Pro or Elite Edition. Thanks to Rachel Cosgrove and the Results Fitness University Business of Fitness segment. Check them out at resultsfitnessuniversity.com. Jenna Gourlay and the Functional Movement System segment. Check them out at functionalmovement.com. My name is Anthony Renna. My new book, Be Like the Best, is at belikethebest.com or continuefit.com. The book is 50 interviews with top fitness pros, and after each interview is a Be Like, which is just an action step, or a challenge that will help you be like the best. Check that out at Be Like the Best or ContinueFit.com. That's going to do it for this time. Thanks again, and I'll speak to you next time.